Today's podcast is a conversation that didn't start out as a podcast conversation. It was just me and my friend Glenn Livingston of defeatyourcravings.com just having a chat. We have weekly chats and we talk about business and life and things we're interested in. And I wanted to talk to Glenn about a book that I had read a while ago called Immunity to Change that I thought was a wonderful book about what are the barriers to individuals changing their habits and even for cultures, entire organizations to shift to something new. And the title of the book should give you a clue that there's something in us that resists certain types of changes. And I loved the book when I read it, and now several years later, having discovered the neuroscience of memory reconsolidation, I went back to it and I really understand how amazing it is that the writers, Keegan and Leahy, were able to identify and talk about and work with these concepts decades before we knew anything about the neuroscience of what keeps old habits stuck in us when they're clearly not helping. So we talked about that for a while, and then Glenn asked a beautiful question. He said, I'm not sure I understand exactly what you're talking about, or something like that. Could you show it to me? Could we do a demo? And so then most of the session is me demonstrating this technique as a coach with Glenn to help him accomplish something very tangible and specific, which is to start making YouTube videos for his new business. And so I hope you will enjoy the conversation, the camaraderie and banter that we have, and also that you'll get to see a little bit about what memory reconsolidation looks like in coaching. So without further ado, let's get into it. Hey, this is Howie Jacobson from AskHowie.com. And I almost said ask yourself, which is not my URL.
Somebody better go buy that quick.
Yeah.
AskYourself.com.
Yeah, I'm sure it's available for only like $11,000 on the secondary market. And who are you, man?
My grandfather once had a dog named Ask Him. And then when people would ask him what his name was, he would say, ask him.
I'm reading a book which there's one of the main characters is a camel named You Bastard.
Oh, no. Do you remember in the movie The Jerk, Steve Martin's The Jerk, what his dog was named?
Shithead,
yeah, right. I love that movie. Okay, so I am the very good Dr. Glenn Livingston from defeatyourcravings.com. I'm not a medical doctor, by the way. I'm a PhD. And we are here to talk about...
So there's a book that I read about 5 years ago that someone recommended to me, and it is a very, very important book in sort of the corporate change world, in which people in organizations are looking like to change individuals who seem to be stuck, to change a division, to change the entire culture. And the book is called, it's a beautiful title, it's called Immunity to Change. And the idea is that we put all this effort into these various levels of change, of what we think of as progress. And there's something about individuals and systems that tends to resist it. And they think of it as immunity, the same way an immune system would resist some, external
foreign invader.
bug. Yeah. And so that's a great title. But what I really liked about the book was the model in which, and I'll give you an example that was kind of used in the book. And then I found, like, right after I read the book, I was working with someone for whom this was absolutely true. He was, I'll aggregate it into my client, the first person in his family to go to college, one of several children who they grew up in financial difficulties, and he's very, very bright, very detail oriented, tons of integrity, rose quickly in various organizations. And when I got to him, he was just pre-C-suite in a large Fortune 500 company. And there were certain behaviors that were being asked of him by his mentor in the C-suite that he was really having trouble acting on. And, here's this guy, probably making, I never asked him, but I'm imagining, high six figures, close to seven figures a year, given the realm of his
Sure.
responsibilities. Certainly around, no less than half a million a year. And, incredibly bright, self-aware, and yet there were a whole bunch of things relating to moving up, relating to how he was going to relate to other people that were getting him stuck. And so as a good coach, behavioral coach, we're focusing entirely on what behaviors, what are you going to do and when, and what comes up as a feeling. And finally, we kind of, we're hitting this wall. We took a step back and I asked, and he wants this promotion, but he kept saying it's not about the money. Like he has more money than. So finally, when it's like, Freud or Shakespeare, the woman protests too much, we think. That if someone keeps talking about it's not about the money, there's something interesting there. So I asked him, like, what does money mean to you? And we got into avoiding poverty, like that. And we got to, like, in his family, what it meant to be the boss, what it meant to be the manager. Because none of his family were managers. They were the workers and the managers were basically shitting on them in their way of thinking. And that there was something, right? And so there was something about that rising to this thing that he wanted very badly was a threat to this part of his identity. Of like, if I do these things and get this role, if I start acting like to be a C-suite at a Fortune 500 company, you delegate everything. You can't be doing the things that you're good at anymore. You've got to bring people along. You've got to raise them up. You've got to mentor them. And that was coming from a position in his mind of superiority. I'm better than you. I'm going to be the manager and I'm going to be making all this money and I'm going to be representing everything that I learned was bad and yucky and mean and the other when I was growing up. And that recognition helped him break free. To be able to say, okay, so I see why I was doing that. I see how that was a protective device to keep me connected to these people. And I don't need to keep doing it because, another thing, like, he's the most successful one by far in his family. He's helping to support other people in the family. Like, no one in the family is going to be upset if nobody knows what he does anyway. Right? Like, so this was all going on in his head. There was no actual threat of rupture with his family based on what he does in this, highly elevated private work environment.
Just like a toxic archetype that got stuck in his head from when he was younger, right?
Yeah. And so they use that as a kind of a template for whatever, whenever we're trying to change something that doesn't seem to want to change, that let's look for how it is a toxic archetype, how how the thing, the resistance to change is actually protective in some way of something that we don't realize we're protecting.
Because the change would grate against the person that you see yourself as or want to be. And so rather than saying, I'm going to be a different type of C-suite executive, right? I'm going to be the change that I want to see in the world, like Andy said. I'm going to redefine the role and live it in a way that may not be the polar opposite of what my dad did, but it's certainly going to introduce more, humanity and collegiality and working with that rather than, bossing. They're kind of stuck in the childlike perception of that archetype of, bosses are bad. Bosses are bad. And that's why in popular movies and TV shows, like in the Star Trek series, there was a time when Admiral Kirk got himself demoted back down to captain. He was really happy because he wasn't sitting around with all the other admirals making strategic decisions and sending people off to their deaths. And he was out there gallivanting around the stars again. Or Chandler Bing got promoted to boss and they started calling him Boss Man Bing and they didn't want to hang out with him anymore. And they made fun of his laugh. And, so it's a tall order. I mean, I think do you want me to talk now, by the way, or did you want to say more?
Yeah.
I think as a species, we are prone to form our identities very quickly and our perceptions of different roles in life very quickly. Like we are, I think is it altricial? There are two types of animals. There are altricial and precocial animals. And I think it's altricial animals are born without the ability to survive for themselves, and they absorb everything from their environment. But pretty quickly, within, like within a year or so for ponies, or within, 5 years for humans, we have figured out who we are and what role we need to play, and what role daddy plays, what role mommy plays, what role the school teacher plays, the firefighter, the policeman. And it just kind of gets stuck there. And there's, I think, an evolutionary value to that being stuck there, because you've absorbed what the last generation learned, and you're going to need it for your survival pretty quickly. So I think that the brain fights against changing those archetypes, and it requires an active effort to figure it out. So it's a tall order, but that's where all the good stuff lies. So I like the work that you're doing, and I know I want to read that book.
Yeah, good. So what I wanted to. What I would love, I don't know the people who wrote it. I'm sure I'm like 1 or 2 degrees away on LinkedIn from some of them, but something that's been in my mind is to reach out to them and talk about, like, I'm not sure when they wrote it, but it's been around for a while, maybe 10, 15 years. But since then, we have a kind of a neuroscience understanding of the mechanism in the brain that, and the process for triggering that mechanism to rewrite the old lessons. So this is, in terms of brain research, like there's episodic memory, like, what you had for breakfast, or, the plot of a Friends episode, like things we remember. And there's also semantic memory, which is the meaning that we ascribe to it. Right. And it was, for a long time, it was thought that semantic memories could not be erased or changed, right? So with like all the studies of rodents, where you pair a shock with a stimulus, right? Or right, that they see the light and they get shocked. That it was thought you could never unpair that. You could create a competing meaning, so you could, after a while, you could then show the light and a treat. But you could always reach they were competing with each other, the two things, or whatever it was, and you could never erase. And starting about 20 years ago, some scientists began to explore what the science of learning is about memory consolidation, where you see something a few times, or one time if it's extremely vivid and important, and your brain changes as a result. It kind of encodes that memory. And they discovered something called memory reconsolidation, which is it's basically in learning. It's how I stop making the same mistakes in Spanish, right? I have a hell of a time with the indirect pronouns, with lay and say. This makes no sense, and I keep making mistakes with it, and all the written things like, oh, I forgot the lay there, But at some point, I'm going to get it. If it's going to be in a conversational class or just one time, I'm going to stop making that mistake. The same way I've stopped making a bunch of other mistakes, where I now have the correct, article, number, and gender. So like, Los Angeles and Las Vegas and La Casa.
I always get that wrong also. Yeah.
And El Dinero. Right. But now it's coming to me without thinking. Right? My brain is now matching number and gender to the noun, and it just eventually it happens. So our brains can relearn, we can update. So I don't have to keep making mistakes. But with emotional learnings, with the semantic memories, what they discovered is that in order to change it, you imagine an Excel spreadsheet. And it's on your computer, and you're typing in the keyboard, but you're not changing anything in the cells, because you have to double click on a cell in order to bring it alive, in order to change it. So this process of memory reconsolidation is equivalent of double clicking a cell in the brain so you can change it, and it involves bringing in the same state the same physiological, emotional, limbic state as when the memory was first learned. So it could be, in the extremes, people, some therapy was like, let's relive your trauma again and again and again so that you, right, which is not what I'm talking about. But just even for 5 seconds, can you feel that fear, right? So with my client, can you, imagine that you are promoted, you're now the C something O, and you're going to a family dinner and you tell everyone, hey, I'm the big boss now. And look, imagine them around the table and see them looking at you the way you would imagine, or imagine being a child and going home to that environment and saying, I'm going to be the boss one day, and see how they look at you. And like, okay, you got the feeling? Yeah. Right. And so once the feeling is there, and you can then help them come up with the what's called the overt statement of, I refuse to act in a way that will get me this promotion, because acting in that way means that I would be putting myself better than everybody else, and I'd be jeopardizing my relationship with you. And getting that promotion means you would never respect me again, or you would expel me, and that would be unbearable. And so from that place where it's true, right? It's not a conceptual idea. Oh yeah, I get that, right? But they're stating it as a limbic truth. Like, this feels true right now. A lot of the time, especially with things like that, where people are highly intelligent, the mind immediately begins collapsing juxtapositions. Like, this is why it isn't true. Oh, I was acting like that. Like, no, that's ridiculous. That's silly. And kind of spontaneously, the mind's always searching for error, right? Like, it always wants to know, like, did I get this wrong? All right. So in this case, if the juxtaposition can occur repeatedly within 4 to 5 hours of the memory becoming labile, it can completely relax it and eliminate it and rewrite it the same way the brain learns anything new.
Wow.
So that's kind of what I want to go to this trio of authors and talk to them about.
Does the ability have to, the emotionality, does it have to be negative? Like for example, I know whatever song is playing on Spotify when I'm most worked up on my exercise bike in the morning runs through my head all day long, and it seems like I remember it for weeks. Can you use positive emotion to open you up to relearning the semantic memory, the semantic meaning also, or does it have to be the original trauma?
Well, I think it's, from what I understand, you want to reactivate the circuitry that was present when it got laid down.
Could I be a guinea pig? Could we do this? I can be a guinea pig for you. Could you coach me through something?
Hell yeah.
Okay.
You want to do it now?
Can we?
Yeah.
Is that okay? You have someplace else?
That's perfect. I just wanted to make sure you weren't talking about doing it privately offline.
No, I was just thinking that rather than trying to sound smart on this, because I don't know that I have that much more to contribute to what you're saying, that maybe we could demonstrate, and that would be more valuable.
Sure.
So I'm trying to get up the courage to start my own YouTube channel. I go on other people's channels and I do videos, but I've always been much more comfortable in audio. I hover around 15% body fat these days. And back in 2000 something, I don't know, about 7 years ago, when I did my original YouTube channel, I was hovering around 10%. Now I work with, my philosophy and the audience that I work with are usually people who are, 50 to 150 pounds overweight, and they're over 50. And my message is much more about stopping binging than having a swimsuit body. As a matter of fact, I've discovered that if you get too obsessed with having a swimsuit body, that it creates a kind of internal panic, which leads to a sense of organismic distress, which tells your brain that there's an emergency, which makes it want more calories, which makes it much harder to, stick to your food rules and avoid binging and have a peaceful relationship with food. so my book is called Defeat Your Cravings, the Back Door to Weight Loss, because I don't want people thinking directly about weight loss. Nevertheless, I find myself reticent to get on the TV and get my YouTube channel started. Just something about making the commitments and being public and letting people look at me all the time. It's it's been hard for me. As you're talking, I have a memory. When I was a pudgy kid, my father had this really annoying habit. Whenever he wanted to say something negative to you, he would say it in baby talk, because you couldn't, fight back because he was so adorable. So there was this one time, and there were a bunch of people around, and I walked into the kitchen, and he walked up to me, and he grabs my stomach. He actually grabs my stomach, and he goes, "Getting fat, getting fat."
How old are you?
About 15.
Okay.
About 15. And that was probably the worst feeling that I remember in the entirety of my life. It's probably the worst feeling that I've ever had. And
what was the feeling? Can you kind of can you bring it up in your body? You don't have to like. Yeah, just for a couple of seconds.
I freaking hated it. It was like everybody was looking at me, and I like I didn't deserve to live, and I should just be ashamed, and there's nothing to be proud of, and none of my other accomplishments mattered.
Wow. And who else was in the room?
My mother, my sister. My parents had a practice at home. They were both psychotherapists, and they practiced at home. And on Saturday mornings, a lot of people would hang out after the sessions and eat bagels and lox with us. We were a good Jewish family.
So it was a kind of a crowd. It was people you didn't know either or didn't know well.
No, I knew them really well.
Oh, okay.
I knew them because they used to come talk to me about what they were going to talk to my dad about before their session. Then they go have their session. They come upstairs and we said, "Any wonder I'm a psychologist?" And they come upstairs and tell me what they told him.
Wow. I mean, what's coming to me is just the huge gap between being adultized by these people. Like, I can't imagine what they were talking to you about, but it must have been like a bunch of stuff that your 15-year-old mind really had no business processing, and then being infantilized by your father in front of them.
It was awful. It was awful. And there were wonderful things about growing up in that family with all those people around, but there were horrible things also. I was exposed to adult psychology and sexuality and all that kind of stuff way too early. Yeah.
Wow. So I'm feeling that moment. What you learned from that moment? Like you said, it was so awful. I didn't deserve to live. Like, what did you learn about how to be from that?
There's no place to hide.
To avoid that, was there any way that you could avoid that happening again?
Well, I got kind of panicked about getting thin. And at the time, it's kind of the root of my, at the time I had exercise bulimia. Like I kind of figured that out later in my life. But at the time I started exercising 2-3 hours a day, I still eat whatever I wanted to. And I lived as a pretty thin person from 16 to 22 or so using that strategy. I counted calories obsessively all the time. I could count up to 5,000 or 6,000 calories obsessively all the time. And I was overeating, oversleeping, overexercising, and overpooping.
Mm-hmm. Right. It sounds like the exercise bulimia was a solution.
Yeah, at the time, yeah.
Did it work? In terms of your father, or?
I mean, he left me alone, but I never really got his approval. There's that, I spent a lifetime trying to get his approval, and I never really got it. So no, it didn't work. But
Yeah.
I avoided his humiliation, so it did
Uh-huh.
work in that sense.
Yeah. Yeah. So and that humiliation sounded so awful. Like you were really othered in this group of. I imagine that people were there because they found your father wise and fascinating and helpful, and he sounds like he and your mother were kind of the kings and queens of that king and queen of that setting, and
Yeah,
for them to be you know ridiculed in that way. Um,
it was no, it was horrible. It was really
yeah,
bad. It was really bad. Yeah.
yeah. So let's bring it back to the YouTube. I want you let's imagine that you're getting ready to do your first video, and you're 15% body fat, and you make the video, and you post it, and now you're refreshing the browser window, waiting for the comments to come in. What comes up for you?
I don't think I would refresh the browser window waiting for the comments to come in. I would put it up and go, F it. Whatever happens, happens.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
What like, let's say, you had to check, you're doing, I don't know, TubeBuddy or some marketing thing, and you want to, comments are good because they're, part of the algorithm. You want to respond to them. Like, what does your imagination tell you, like, based on this avoiding humiliation? Like, can you imagine, like, what if the comments came back and they were humiliating?
I mean, inevitably, there are some that are. Like I've learned that if you want to be loved by the masses, you have to be hated by the masses too. So
Mm-hmm.
I'm anticipating that. I've kind of learned not to read them. I mean, maybe for the first couple of weeks, I look at them just to see if I'm missing something in the content.
Mm-hmm.
But then I just figure, well, they're going to be haters, and it's par for the course. So I've developed I guess, a tough skin about it. Every now and then, so my book has 20,000 reviews. 10% of them are negative, like 1 or 2 stars.
Right. Yeah. No. Clearly, your intellectual mind knows that they can't hurt you.
Right. Okay.
Right.
Right.
So, I have a thought, which is, and tell me how workable this sounds, is to go back to when you were 15, but go back as an adult watching the scene, and at the moment at which, like, picture up to, like, you walking up, your father walking up to you, grabbing your belly and saying, "Getting fat," and at that moment your adult self can intervene. What would you do?
I would say you've got a lot of nerve talking to your son like that, fatty.
Oh,
my dad had a much bigger pot belly than I did back then, and he was sitting and eating, like tons of bagels and lox, and he had a lot of nerve coming up to me. I'd
wow.
say,
Okay, so 6'4", right?
mm-hmm.
6'4" Glenn walks in
Right.
and goes right up. You're taller than him in this scene,
Oh
right?
yeah, I'm taller than him. I've always been taller than him.
Yeah. So you say to him, "You've got a lot of nerve talking to your son like that, fatty." What happens? What do you see happening?
Whenever you confronted him about anything, he'd get this really dumb look on his face, and he just wouldn't respond.
Okay, so he withdraws. Now turn to
Yeah.
15-year-old Glenn. What do you
Right.
what do you see? What's up for him right now, having witnessed that?
He's relieved that someone protected him.
Hmm.
He's relieved that someone protected him.
Yeah. Yeah, go ahead.
Because I grew up in this environment where nobody could challenge my dad,
Hmm.
and you never got anywhere when you challenged him. People would come to his defense. These people needed him. They were confessing
Yeah.
their life secrets to him, and and they felt very vulnerable and dependent, and a lot of them were in the middle of difficult crises in their marriages or with their kids or something, and they needed him to love them. They had the same psychology that I did. They felt dependent upon him. So, it would be tremendous relief.
A lot of room for abuse there.
There was a lot of room for abuse.
Yeah.
There really was.
Yeah. So take a look at 15-year-old Glenn. He is relieved that someone finally stood up for him. Does he know who you are?
If I come in as yeah, he does.
Yeah.
Although it's interesting, I was showing my child pictures to someone before, and I look nothing like what I do as an adult. They couldn't imagine that it was me, but yeah, I would know. I would recognize myself.
Okay. So what do you want to tell him?
I don't know if I'd have to tell him anything. I just kind of put my hand on his shoulder and let him. Maybe I'd say I'm proud of him. Maybe I'd say I'm proud of you.
So say it to him.
I'm proud of you, buddy. Yeah. Proud of you. Getting your driver's license, doing well in school, playing the piano, learning how to juggle. You got a lot of talent, a lot of ability, and don't let this throw you. Your dad feels insecure inside, and he needs all these people around him worshiping him, and he's putting you down so he feels better, and don't let it throw you.
Mm. Tell him about your current weight and what you do.
I've helped millions of people to stop overeating. I'm not skinny, and you don't have to be skinny. I'm not skinny. You don't have to be skinny. You can just be you, be healthy, talk to your doctors, but look at your blood levels, but you don't have to be skinny. It's okay.
Look at him. What do you see?
He doesn't quite believe me. He thinks that he's got to be skinny to avoid this level of humiliation and embarrassment again.
Yeah. Tell him he's going to be skinny for the next 6 years and he will not be humiliated. And then he can go on with his life after that.
Why do I want to tell him he's going to be skinny for the next 6 years?
Because he is.
Just because that's what happened.
Yeah. Tell him he never gets humiliated again in that way.
But it's not true. I did.
Yeah. In other ways, around weight or?
No, I mean, I got up to almost 300 pounds at one point.
And yeah. I see.
Well, I mean, it's interesting. Nobody ever said anything as bad as my dad said. I think once in a while people would say, "Glenn, are you still working out?" I mean, I'm 6'4" and I'm broad-shouldered and I carried it pretty well. Yeah. So I didn't look like a monster, but I felt like I looked like a monster.
Yeah. So, yeah, if he doesn't quite believe you. Does he have something to say? What do you hear?
I mean, I think he would say thank you for the sentiment that he intellectually believed me, that he would work on integrating what I was saying, and thank you for the love, and would probably ask him to hang around and keep giving it, and then maybe I'd believe him over time.
Okay. Would you?
Yeah.
It sounds like he's open to an ongoing relationship.
Yeah, I think he would.
Yeah.
I think he would be.
Do you have time for him?
Absolutely.
Do you have time for him as one of your clients?
It sounds like a priority. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll make time. I'll make time. Yeah.
Beautiful.
That's helpful. Okay.
Yeah. So as you come back to standing in front of the camera, ready to push the button, what comes up for you now?
It's still scary, but it seems like less of a big deal.
What's scary about it? Is it still the people seeing you 5% more body fat than you have?
This is going to sound silly, but I think that it's always been difficult for me to fully embrace being a leader in the world. I think because of what I went through with my dad, I mean, I've accomplished all sorts of things, right? Like, I can quote the numbers and, we've got, you know, everybody knows what I do. I got coaches working for me and we help all these people. I don't know that I've ever fully embraced it. Like that people really see me as a leader. They want to learn from me. They would like to be me. I think a lot of people would kill to be in my position. I think a lot of people would kill to have my relationship with food, but I've never thoroughly embraced that. And I'm starting to work on a book on body image. And so this is, and I keep saying I can't publish this yet because I haven't solved it. And this is the conflict that I haven't really solved. I haven't been able to fully embrace just kind of being who I am. I mean, I'm never going to be a swimsuit model. It doesn't matter if I'm 7% body fat. I just don't have the body for it. And I don't know who's going to pay me for that anyway. I don't have troubles attracting women. I'm relatively healthy. There's no reason for me to, I suppose there are ways it would be healthier to be, 12% as opposed to 15%. But I don't know that the juice is worth the squeeze. And I think that the more important dynamic to manage would be, softening that superego so that I'm not, so I can let go of that humiliation and self-hatred at a deeper level. That's what I think the bigger conflict would be. The bigger priority would be.
And do you think that that's the root of the ambivalence about, expressing yourself as a leader?
It's at least a screen memory for it. I'm just going to switch to being a psychologist for a second, then I'll go back to being your client. Okay. In psychology, we talk about there are these crystallized moments in our head which we think of as the root, but if you think about it, it's just illustrative of how he treated me, right? So it was not really just this one moment that caused it. Sure. It was day in and day out that was the role that I played for him, where he would feel superior for me. And there were nice things about my dad also, by the way, but this was definitely a dynamic in our interaction. And so I think the root of it was the day-to-day interaction with him, where he gained glee from humiliating me on a deep level.
Yeah, and you explained to your 15-year-old self that it was due to his insecurities.
Yeah, no, and I've had 30 years of therapy and journaling and dream analysis, and I don't think I've really faced the emotions, like in the way that you're having me look at the emotions here. But I understand it intellectually 6 ways to Sunday. I really know what the problem was, and he didn't have a dad, and his mother was humiliating, and he got obsessed with sports and everything to try to find some sense of self-confidence, and he did better than his dad did, and I kind of forgive him for it, but there's still residues.
Yeah. And you also mentioned that there were ways in which he was lovely.
Well, I mean, he gave me the opportunity to learn all about psychology from a very young age. And I always joke that, his office was my power place. I go downstairs and read his books. When my little 9-year-old friends would come over, I'd have them lay down on the couch and tell me about their mother. It's a joke, but I learned so much. And I had so many opportunities, and he was upwardly mobile. He came from a kind of Lower East Side blue collar family, and he was the first person to become a doctor, and he pioneered the way for so many other people in the family to become doctors. And, he moved to Great Neck, Long Island, where we'd have a really good school system. And, he provided, he left me a little money. I mean, all of it. He was not a great father, and I would have traded a lot of that to just had time with him where he was supporting and loving me and telling me to be confident in myself. And I kind of had to make appointments to talk to him like I'd make an appointment with the psychologist, as opposed to just calling my dad as an adult. So there are lots of things that I resent, but but he was lovely in a lot of ways. He was very, very smart. I'm a writer because he was a writer. You know, he taught me that soul was more important than money, and love was more important than power, and experiences were more important than things. And like a lot of my core values come from the things that he would preach. He didn't live them as well, but
yeah. But I mean, you can see that what you internalized about yourself as a young person was all about him. It wasn't about you. Right, like you were the Rorschach blotch.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. It was projecting, and he was working things through as a child, not as an adult.
Yeah, and there's a part of you that has not been updated, right? Like if you fully, totally, in your whole being understood that he's looking at you and projecting all of his mess onto you, and it had nothing to do with who you were. That there was nothing humiliating about yourself, right? There was nothing you had done. Everything, like you learned most of it from him. The things that sounds like the things that he would try to humiliate you for. Right. So,
That's
I have
helpful.
I have one more thought, which is, how would it feel to go back to that scene and have the 15-year-old play the lead?
And my 15-year-old self would say, "You've got a lot of nerve, fatty."
Something like that. Whatever. Like if you could rewrite that scene in a way that was totally empowering for you.
I might not go that far, because I have this tattoo. It says "Be kind," right?
Yeah.
To me, that means. I'm sorry.
Yeah. So be kind. What's a way in which you can be maximally kind to yourself and your dad and the people in the living room?
Well, I think being kind,
because taking it isn't kind, right?
Right. It's not kind to take it. It demonstrates kind of sadomasochistic value in the world, right? And that you have to absorb that kind of abuse. So that's not kind to anybody there. You're right. To me, kindness, though, means not responding with humiliation to humiliation.
Beautiful.
So
how do you respond with dignity in a way that doesn't humiliate him?
Dad, I see you've been practicing your social skills. Good one, Dad. Like give him a little bit of a jab back, but kind of make it soft. And
a little soft sarcasm.
A little soft sarcasm. He would probably laugh at that. And he might even say he was sorry. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's almost 60 years of psychological training to come up with that one, to thread that needle. Do you want to try it? Like imaginally? Like see the scene, smell the lox and bagels, see your dad come up to you. All right, grabs you, getting fat, and you turn to him with a smile.
So you've been practicing your social skills, I see. Good one, Dad.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would work.
Face.
That would definitely work. Yeah.
So look around the room as you say that. See how the scene plays. Look at the faces of
everybody would laugh. He would laugh. It would dissolve the tension, and it would have protected me from the humiliation.
Great. So I want to take you through it, so you don't have to do it. So I'm just going to.
Okay.
You can stay here. You can close your eyes if you want, if that makes it easier. So I want you to picture is it the dining room or the kitchen? All right. Everyone's sitting there. There's this bagels and the lox. And there's this, very familiar environment. And you walk in, and Dad looks at you and goes over to you, and he's jovial, and he's been the center of attention, and he's just, keeping it up. And he grabs your belly and he says, "Getting fat." And you turn to him with a smile on your face and say, "Oh, Dad, I see you've been practicing your social skills."
Yeah.
And he's taken aback for a quarter second and then joins in the laughter, appreciative of your wit and wisdom. The other people in the room are laughing, and feel basking in that. Like you've passed a test of manhood in a way. You are not to be fucked with, and you're kind, right? And you have just rewritten the history of the family, and the humiliation has stopped with you.
I love it.
You respond with kindness, and that starts rolling backwards towards him. It's a beautiful lesson for your mother, your sister, for all the people who have been worshiping and depending on your father. And feel in your body that power to use words and concepts to heal, that becomes your legacy in this world.
Yeah, and it's time. It's time for me to let go of that and claim my power. And, what do I have? Another 20 or 30 years of real active work in the world. It's time for me to really be able to let go of that. But the thing that really helped me the most in all this, believe it or not, was the idea that it would not be kind to take it. I cared about the other people in the room. I really like these people. And I was not modeling good behavior by taking it. I mean, he was not modeling good behavior with what he did, and it was his responsibility. But I really was not helping anybody there by taking it. They need to see someone that stands up for themselves, and we can do it and maintain the relationship. And like in that one stupid joke is, just a world of who I want to be in the world. It's just it's just in that one stupid moment. That's who I want to be and the impact that I want to have in the world. I want to be able to, if I have to absorb people's humiliation and aggression and turn it around and show them they can't do that to me. But you don't have to use a chainsaw to slice a watermelon. And right, and show them that this is not as powerful as you think it is. Like I don't have to go to town on my dad. I don't have to knock him out with a punch or something. I can just give him a barb back, and but still at the same time make the loving relationship available. That's who I want to be in the world. That's what I want to do.
Yeah. Well, and you are the last person I would ask for an objective evaluation of this question. But how like if you had to look and ask people that you've been dealing with over your career and through Defeat Your Cravings and through things before that and right now, like what would people say about how you are? Like you talk about aspirationally, I look at you as having embodied that. Like,
thanks, buddy. Thanks.
As a person and as a teacher. Like I'm just imagining how many people have come to you for help with their eating issues who are also dealing with humiliation around weight, whether it was through childhood or self-humiliation or unkind words from spouses or parents. Like that's a constant theme. And I listened to hundreds of hours of you talking. And I've watched you many demos with people, things you've shared publicly and worked with me. And I have never heard an unkind word. And I've heard you help people find their dignity. And I guess I imagine if you asked a lot of people, you'd get a 360 of that.
Thank you. I can accept that. I can incorporate that. It's probably not an accident that I've molded my work in a way to be shame relieving. Because I feel the pain. I know what it's like. But it's time for me to take that to a deeper level for myself.
Yeah. So that the deeper level allows you to spread the word to right? It's like you're a shame destructor.
I'm going to get someone to draw me as a superhero, as a shame destructor.
Just don't get another tattoo.
I'm not. No, this was parts of my. I don't really belong with tattoos. It's not really part of my image and understanding of myself. But when I got divorced and I was 52, I said, "F it, I can get tattoos if I want to." And there was this really pretty girl that said, "That's a great idea. You should get a tattoo. I'll go with you." And so, I went and got a couple of tattoos. So
yeah, go ahead.
I got to tell you a funny story. I got 2 tattoos that day. Me and my friend Stephanie Padavani. The other one said raw vegan because at the time I was trying to be 100% raw vegan, and right, but then I kind of evolved and I decided that I really don't want to be 100% raw vegan. Like I want to eat some cooked vegan food also, and so I changed it to say mostly. So it says now. At one time, I was at the dentist. I don't know why, but he was looking at the words "be kind," and I said, "Yeah, but I'm going to put a subhead under that one also, and it's going to be you." Am I allowed to curse on this podcast?
Oh yeah, I already have.
Okay, Roger, you're going to have to bleep out the curses for me for my publication, but it would say, "Be kind, you candy ass motherfucker." Sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry.
No,
okay.
I love it. Yeah. No, I'm saying like for someone as self-aware and committed to growth as you are, if you commit to tattoos as well, you're going to end up looking like Guy Pearce in Memento.
Well, no, I learned my lesson that they're pretty permanent. It's and you, as much as you think you might be committed, I'm a different person than I was 10 years ago, and my nutritional knowledge evolved, and my knowledge of maintaining a peaceful relationship with food evolved, and so no more tattoos.
Well, and I love that as sort of a metaphor for what we've been talking about, where these imprints from our past don't have to be tattoos, right? They don't. They are.
Yeah.
Right, like that story to me, I don't know exactly how it's landing with you. I'm not a professional at doing this work. I'm sort of demoing and learning.
You're really good.
But thanks. But what I see is like this is like an origin story, from a humiliation story to like this set my course in the world. This is the work I want to do to heal humiliation and shame.
Right. I was minding my own business, and this monster was thrust upon me in my village, like the comment and the right. And I had to I had to gather friends and go on a grand adventure and get new weapons and, all of these tools so that I could slay the dragon so you don't have to, and then I can come back and relax with my people. So yes, it is an origin story. Yeah.
Yeah. So as you think about, as you get ready to make your videos, and if you feel echoes of, I don't want to show people myself, I'm not as thin as I want to be, like you can recognize that those thoughts are like waving the enemy flag, and be like, no, my mission. These thoughts are going to remind me of my mission.
Okay.
To abolish shame, to teach people how to stand up to humiliation in ways that don't humiliate in return, that aren't eye for an eye, that transform into kindness.
I'm the shame destructor, SD man. I'm going to get someone to draw that. I'm going to go copyright that right now. Shame destructor man.
Awesome.
Okay.
Well, thanks for helping me demo this.
Thanks, buddy. No, it's terrific. I'd be happy to do it again. It was really helpful. The other way that it's consistent with the metaphor of the tattoo is the truth is tattoos are not permanent. You can remove them, but it's pretty painful. And what you were doing, it was a little bit of a painful process to go through, I have to say, but I felt so much relief at the end. I felt like something was gone and lifted. So,
okay, beautiful.
Yeah.
So I hope I asked enough whether this was workable and that I wasn't trying to,
Yeah, no. I'm going to get Howie tattooed on my forehead. Got to commit to this process, so.
Yeah, okay.
No, yeah.
The question is, are you going to do it so that I can read it or so that you can read it?
So I can see it in the mirror, right?
Okay.
Yeah, I wonder, when people get things tattooed on their forehead, do they do it so other people can read it, or they can read it in the mirror? That's interesting. I'm not really going to get tattooed.
Yeah, I remember a study of somebody about empathy, like it was like, what affects empathy and like being more powerful. And they did all these experiments to sort of affect people's sense of power in a group, and then asked them to like to draw a letter E on their forehead imaginarily. And the people with more empathy drew it so that other people could read the E, and the people who had less empathy would draw it like for themselves.
How interesting.
I don't recall the
That's fascinating
details beyond that.
Just my last comment about tattoos before we go. I've realized I have to be a little careful about what I say. I have a lot of visual imagery in the system that I teach. You define a food monster inside of you, and then I go, cage the food monster. I started getting pictures of people's hands and arms with tattoos of food monsters in a cage on it. Ooh. So I've got to be careful what I say. All right. Hey, I got to go. I'm sorry. I really appreciate this. This was wonderful.
Well, so do I. Thank you so much for helping me articulate and practice and share. So as always, a pleasure. And that's a wrap. You can find the show notes with links to the things we talked about at plantyourself.com/583. So movement news, I am injured again. I don't know what happened. I did my usual Beach Ultimate training on Sunday, took a bike. There's something weird going on with the trains. Well, weird for me since I don't read and write Catalan. Something about work on the line, and there was only one train and it stopped at Garraf, and you had to get off and go down and up, and I had my bicycle with me. So somehow a combination of that, the schlepping of the bicycle, the riding from station to station, a little bit of rain, and the training cranked my back, so I am now fully in recovery mode. Sitting up feels like a daring, risky thing to do, so hopefully within a couple of weeks I will be back to training. My trainer Jay, his goal for me is to get up to 100 push-ups in a few minutes. So doing sets of 20 push-ups and 200 rope jumps, and then repeating that and trying to get it all done in 10 minutes or less. So that's my goal right now. My goal is to be able to walk unassisted to the toilet, but it's all good. All good. I think that's about it I want to talk about today. So as always, thank you for listening or watching, and be well, my friends. All right, time for thanks. Thanks to Will Ridenauer for allowing me to use his beautiful song Sabali Dawn, the Dance of Peace. You can find more of Will's music at his website, willridenauer.com. And of course, thanks to all of you Plant Yourself podcast patrons. Kim Harrison, Lynn McClellan, Brittany Porter, Dominic Maurer, Barbara Whitney, Tammy Black, Amy Good, Amanda Hatherley, Mary Jane Wheeler, Ellen Kennelly, Melissa Cobb, Rachel Behrens, Tina Scharf, Tina Ahern, Jen Filkinovsky, David Bizek, The Mysterious Michelle X, Elsbeth Feldman, Leah Stoller, Alan Christensen, Colleen Peck, Michelle Landry, Josina, Sarah Durkis, Kelly Cameron, Janet Selby, Claire Adams, Tom Franzek, Jeanette Benham, Gila Cert, David Donahue, Blair Cyber, Dorona Vizov, Gio and Carolyn Argentati, Jody Friesner, Misha Rosen, Michael Warbeck, Aviva Lael, Alicia Lemus, Val Linneman, Nick Harper, Bandana Charlie, Molly Levine, The Inscrutable Harry R., Susan Laverty, The Panda Vegan, Craig Kovic, Adam Scharf, Karen Burry, Heather Morgan, Nigel Davies, Marion Blum, Teresa Koppel, Julian Watkins, Breed O'Connell, Sharon Hirschman, Linda Ayad, Holm Hedegaard, Isa Tuzinwa, Connie Hainline, Aaron Greer, Alicia Davis, Heather O'Connor, Carolyn Jensen, Sherry Olakoski of Plant Powered for Health, Karen Smith, Scott Marani, Karen and Joe Crabtree, Kirby Burton, Teresa Carell, Kevin McCauley, Elizabeth Rothschild, Ann Jesse, Cheryl Dwyer, Jenny Hazelton, Peter W. Evans, Dennis Bird, Darby Kelly, Lori Fanny, Linnea Lundquist, Emily Iconelli, Levy Wallach, Rosamund McAtee, Dan Picorni, Stephen Leenan, Patty DiMartino, Mike and Donna Kartz, Deanne Bishop, Bilberry Elf, Marjorie Lewis, Tricia Adams, Nancy Sheldon, Lindsay Bayshore, Gunmarie Hagan, Tracy Gullidge, Laura Heaton, Meg from Mama Says, Stacey Stokes, Ben Savage, Michael Kay, David Hughes, Connie Rogers, Claire England, Sally Robertson, Paranganchi, Amy Daly, Brian Tourville, Mark Jeffrey Johnson, Josie Dempsey, Karen Schmidt, Pamela Hayden, Emily Perryman, Allison Corbett, Richard Stone, Lauren Vaught of Edible Musings, Aaron Hasty, Sean Owen, Sagar Naik, Erica Piedra, Danielle Roberts, Michael Lushton, Sarah Johnson, Catherine Floyd, for your generous support of the podcast. That's it for now. As always, be well, my friends.